This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
A driver and two others, and they arrived at 1:35 a.m. From the CCTV, the three are seen taking their sweet time or in no hurry to rush to the casualty to save a life or to help a sick person. So that when somebody appears at the A&E, what you're thinking is that, okay, this person is in a bad state.
Yeah.
We need to get medical attention and do that real quick. Stat, as they say. They are seen in the hospital corridor where they have a chat. Two are in the blue uniform, while one is in the jungle green police uniform of an administration officer. A security guard peeps out the direction of the vehicle when two in blue uniforms pass with a stretcher while their colleague follows, busy on his mobile phone. It takes around 2 minutes to load Ojwang, and the officers are not seen wheeling the stretcher back. In total, it was almost 23 minutes after they arrived. Now, according to Forensics Director Joshua Mutua, and I quote, "Based on my review of the available CCTV footage, it is my opinion that the victim was taken to Mbagathi Hospital on June 8th at approximately 1:35 by three uniformed police officers in a police vehicle. The officers are observed wheeling the deceased toward the casualty area on a stretcher. They are then seen returning to the vehicle with the deceased still on the stretcher, placing him into the vehicle and departing the hospital compound at approximately 2:15.
Yeah.
Do you understand? They went with him and returned with him. As in, they left the hospital with him. Capish?
Capish.
Okay. It is worth noting that all this time, the vehicle was unmanned. This is according to IPOA Senior Assistant Forensics Office Director Joshua Mutua. So, all of this took 23 minutes, unless my math is off.
23 minutes when they arrived at the hospital.
They arrived at the hospital at 1:35.
Yes.
Three of them. They left, no, it's more than 23 minutes. So it's 25 minutes too, and then 15 minutes later. So about 40 minutes. They arrived at the hospital with him. I don't know if any medical attention, but from what the CCTV footage can say, they left with him at 2:15. Now, in order to piece that together in terms of what happened after they left, it's the job of investigators.
The job of investigators.
But they didn't. Now, when somebody is pronounced dead on arrival, is the body kept at the hospital? But now that they left with him, is a question that's then being asked by everybody. We continue to look into the details of this because it still continues in court. But justice must be delivered here. All right, we're getting into our conversation this hour. And another thing that needs to be delivered, it would appear, is that Kenya needs to be delivered to the world, to the first world. I don't know how that's going to happen, kicking or screaming, but we'll try and figure that out in this conversation this morning. Because then joining us to then be able to do that is corporate finance expert Johnson Derry, and he's here with us this morning. Good morning, Johnson. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. I hope. And yourselves?
Salama.
We are well, thank you. Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. We are going to be looking at some tough stuff because we're told that it can happen. And so now you have a guy who's going to come and tell us how. Before we do that, Dennis takes us to Madagascar. You may ask why. Well, that's because there's a proverb that we'd love for you to interpret.
Now, a few things about Madagascar. Largest producers of vanilla in the world. Yes, so it is. You could as well call it a vanilla country, right?
Vanilla
natural, and a natural vanilla for that matter. 90% of the wildlife as well can only be found in that country. You enjoy wildlife. You go to Madagascar, you can only see that wildlife there. Yeah. It is an island, fourth largest island, and the shoreline that they do have is 5,000 kilometers. Think about 5,000 kilometers. What that means, it's the same distance as leaving London to Dubai. That's the coastline that Madagascar does have. But the proverb we get this morning, a person who sells eggs should not start a fight in the market. A person who sells eggs should not start a fight in the market. How would you interpret it?
Well, obviously, that's a question of wisdom, right? Whether you're right or wrong, whatever fight you start, you risk losing your eggs. So, it's in your interests to manage situations so that you don't lose more than what you need to.
Yeah. Well said. Wisdom, tumia akili. Yeah.
So the achievement of world class status or first world status seems to be something that Kenya is clawing for at the moment. With certain things that we have seen, the establishment of the National Infrastructure Fund, the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund, and mega infrastructure. And it seems as if these are the things that is going to take Kenya into that space. You smile. So I wonder if that is because you do not agree.
We've been at this for a long, long time. And I remember when Vision 2030 was launched,
Yep.
and I forget what his name was. He was the chair of Vision 2030, a young gentleman, budding professional.
Mugo Kabati.
Mugo Kabati.
Yes.
And I remember tweeting and saying, this is not how it's done. And it's for a very simple reason. So the business of economic growth is the business of generating value.
Mm-hmm.
But the concept of value is very subjective. So even when you talk to entrepreneurs and the way they invest, what is valuable today may not be valuable tomorrow. I like going back to the famous quote by the then Nokia chief.
Yep.
And he said, we did nothing wrong, and yet we lost. All that investment went to, why? Because people's concept of what value is changed. You had the best phones at one time, and then not anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the countries that have been able to leapfrog into development have understood this. So that's why you have the very the debate in economics about market-driven development versus planned development. And most countries at market time, usually you'll find that they pursue planned development as opposed to market-driven development.
Are you saying that from the word go, even when we're coming up with the Vision 2030, we've always gotten it wrong? And if that's the case, then is it that advice is not sought? Is it that advice is given but it's not adhered to? Or is it that we allow politics to come in between and hence we lose focus?
I think this one, I want to put it on the doorstep of of how economics is taught in Kenya. Mm-hmm. So if you look at how, and this is just from experience, the people who call themselves economists in Kenya have basically act from one school of thought. So we don't have the market-driven versus debates that versus planned debates that you have in US, in UK, in Europe or whatever. Ours is very, So we've got this. I call it inbreeding. The ideas are all sourced from one school of thought. And that's why I thought I needed to come here, because I don't hear mine being given the microphone quite often. So it's you need to let the markets decide where you invest. If you invest for the sake of investing, that's what we call you run a very high risk of what we call misallocation of resources. You've invested in somewhere that you're producing products that nobody wants. That's a big risk, and for a country that is poor, resources are scarce. That's Econ 101. Resources are scarce, so you have to allocate resources in a manner that maximizes output or value, if you will, to society, and this has to be voted for in the market. What people say they want versus what they actually will pay for are two different things. And what they'll pay for is what determines the value. What they want, really, that's not their money. If it's not their money, they'll have a very different criteria of what they want than when they're spending their money. And that's where the gap is.
Is Kenya resource scarce?
Well, so in economics, we say everybody resources are scarce because you never have enough resources to do everything you want. Now, for Kenya, there's a lot of poverty.
Yeah.
Right? Why is that? It's because of poverty is really scarcity. When you don't have everything you need, you're available to eat. When we say you're poor, it's because you don't have the capacity to buy everything that you need to survive. So when you're poor, obviously, there's a lot of scarcity. It's not scarcity of resources; it's scarcity of resources.
But is Kenya poor?
I believe we are.
Why? What would be the indicators of this poverty that you say Kenya is?
I mean, it's just your ability to nourish yourself, the ability of every individual to nourish themselves. So you've got like a poverty incidence of plus 40%. Right? That means we are producing less than we need.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, poverty is death. It's scarcity. It's death. You need food now, and you can't get that food now. You're poor. And why don't you have that food? It's because you're not producing.
Okay.
Right? And by producing, we're not talking about food. By the way, there's enough food for everybody in Kenya. I think we produce more than enough food to feed everybody. It's just that I will not produce to feed you because you can't buy what I produce.
Okay, so we're now making a connection, and we're saying that the wholesome definition of poverty here is not because there are not available resources, but that the capacity for folks to then get those available resources then defines their poverty?
Yes, or even just make use of the resources that you have. You go into some place and they produce only one sort of good, but because they're not able to trade it for whatever reason, then they're not able to buy from somebody else. So they will not be seen as a market, right? So somebody says that the citizen is both a producer and a consumer. You produce so that you are able to trade it for whatever you need. So you're supposed to produce in abundance, and that production then allows you don't have to produce everything you need. You just have to produce what other people need, then trade that in so that you can be able to afford whatever it is that you need for your nourishment.
You earlier stated that there is, when you invest and it is not backed by, say, research or proper, or how it is trained in the country. Has Kenya invested in things that are making it difficult for us to get to that promised land, which is the first world status? In terms of, we've invested in brick and mortar that does not translate to how the economy would perform better to hasten that progress.
Most certainly, there's a lot of waste. In fact, I always tell people that I think Kenya suffers more from bad economics than from corruption.
Okay.
Because, you see, when I steal money, it stops there. I've stolen and it stops there. But when I invest in bad investment, and that's what we call white elephants. Yeah. When I buy a white elephant, not only have I lost there at the point of investment, but running that white elephant also still costs money. You understand? So I'm losing not just what I've got, the scarce resources I have now, but even into the future. and have committed resources of production, future production, to this thing that the country doesn't need.
Yeah. I mean, you look at how Kenya has done it, and there is the CAIPs, which is supposed to be done by the counties, and then there is the EPZs that was set up as well, so that each and every single county had something that they are producing that then would feed into the overall national conversation on pushing the economy forward. But even while at that, there is sluggish movement in implementing of all these EPZs across the country. I mean, all we saw is we are launching, there's a headstone, but nothing much has moved into that. So how does that conversation on counties as well, developing on their own, that would then plug into the national conversation on us moving forward? How do you balance that from the national level?
You see, so when you're going into investment, what are you trying to do? I always say, so for the entrepreneur, when he's investing, he's identified a problem that he needs to solve, right? And to solve in a manner that people will pay more for the service or for the product than what it costs to produce it. Right? That's why it's sustainable, right? So that's why the concepts of cost of doing business is very important. So now, if you're investing in areas that we don't need, then you're asking Kenyans to pay more in taxes to fund those investments, to fund the debt that is being taken to, and all that money. So you're asking more in taxes. What you're doing is you're raising the cost of doing business, and you're making it unviable for entrepreneurs to solve problems.
Okay, so let's get real here. With the way businesses operate, the only way that you can be said to be in the black is when you have developed this product, you sell it to market, and you're making a continuous profit. Not in June you make a profit, and then for the next 6 months you don't. That you're making continuous profit, then you're said to be in surplus. That is the only way you develop. So Kenya, at the moment, if you're going to be talking about moving to the place where you can start to do things like explore nuclear weapons or nuclear energy, or if you can do things like
going to the moon.
Going to the moon and sponsoring a spaceship to the moon, it is because you have taken care of your basic needs. And if you were to have Maslow's hierarchy of needs for nations, then it is because your people are not hungry, and that you have gotten something that you're doing that is making you surplus. You have to be operating in a surplus. So for me, it would appear as though you need to be manufacturing something that somebody else needs, that they are buying with regularity.
Yeah.
Is Kenya there?
So Kenya, the beauty about Kenya, it's a very, very diverse economy. I mean, I meet with entrepreneurs every day. Those are my customers, and investors are my other customers. So I bridge that gap. So Kenya is a very, very diverse economy, and that allows for a lot of mistakes. That's why, our politicians keep pulling us back, but somehow we are still trudging on. So you'll find quite a bit in manufacturing. There's even today, there's still investment going into manufacturing. There's still investment going into trade. There's still investment going into logistics. There's still investment going into... So all these places are still getting their investments. However, it is in spite of, not because of government support, right? Or government spending. So I think Kenya, and maybe it's because we liberalized early, then it allowed investment to go into certain areas that whether the government liked it or not. So things like avocado, I don't think that was consciously pushed by government, but it just blossomed out of demand externally. And you're seeing even now, I'm told some guys are converting their tea tea fields to avocado farms. Maize as well is converted to avocado. So you're seeing a lot of all this, and this is reallocation of resources. So people are moving from where they are loss making to where now they are profitable, because they are providing value for somebody. And just to correct something you said, well, let me not say correct. Let me disagree.
You can please,
You see, what you produce is not. You shouldn't be say you're producing to feed. Let's feed fast and then figure this other stuff out later and pursue them. No, what you should be doing is creating value. You know, because everybody has their own unique endowments. So because you have your unique endowments, I might not be a good farmer, but I shouldn't have to be a good farmer to have a good life, right? I should be allowed to produce what I can produce for whoever it is that needs my produce, right? And I should be able to access resources to put together products or services so that I can produce for somebody that may not necessarily be food, could even be entertainment, could be whatever.
But that is of some value.
That is of some, yes.
So we're actually not disagreeing.
Yeah,
so
but you have to create value.
Okay, so is Kenya creating value? That now we can ask based on that. Is Kenya creating value to the place whereby you say it can be recognized? Because the goal is the first world.
I always say it's down to the system, right? So, for example, like in the private sector, there's a lot of destruction of value as well. But the good thing about the private sector is when you're loss making, you quickly run out of resources, and your destructive ability stops. The public sector does not have that corrective mechanism. So you can have a company like KQ losing 20 billion every year for 10 years straight, 20 years straight. You have Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, which has 50 billion shillings in debt. How did you get to 50 billion in debt? As a media house, what are you spending on? You see, you have my favorite actually is SGR. If you look at the revenues, SGR is pulling, we're talking about 23 billion a year. It consumed over 500 billion. Do you think that's wise investment?
I mean, I know we're going for a break right now.
Yes,
but
we
when
are.
you come back, I wanted to look at how we are moving to this first world when you've not handled your basics, where basics is how is your health. A healthy nation should come in place to build this economy or to take us there. How is your education? Because then technology, research is part and parcel of us getting to the first world. But let's take a break.
Yeah, and then, getting into, because I assume that if you want to get somewhere, if you're going to bake a cake, at the very least, you should have the ingredients on the table.
Yes.
Or at least know the shop where you can buy the eggs. And that's my question.
Yeah.
Do we know
Where we headed or what we need to get there.
Okay. We'll continue with this conversation when we come back. It's 25 minutes to 8 o'clock, and Buanadere is here, and we're going to crack this thing. At least try. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room. This is the Situation Room. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
To that first world status that you're looking for. Is that possible? Or how critical then is it to invest in these sectors that I've mentioned for that first world status to be a reality?
Wow, a lot to unpack there. I was just trying to disentangle my thoughts here. So you've got a government that has decided to say, look, health will be on us, right? Education on us, infrastructure on us, right? It's a good thing that Kibaki let a bit of energy go, so that private sector now is running with that. And of course, we're lucky also that we've got private sector investment in education and healthcare. Very lucky that. So you've got your own system of insurance and whatnot. But government has said, look, we're going to compete in this market. We're going to do this, right? The biggest problem now is pricing. Because then, how do you, because this has to be sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So do you price at the till, at the point of purchase, or do you price via tax? So we've got some sort of mix of that, some wild mix. So you've got people pay a token at the till. So when you go to Kenyatta, you go to Mbagathi Hospital or whatever, you'll pay their bit. Education, you might pay a bit. Okay, we try to make primary education free.
It is not.
but there have been fees creeping in one form or the other. So it's So reality checks in, right? So I would have much rather resources go towards funding investment where incomes can rise, right? So that people can participate more robustly in the economy, and that way they're able to pay their way around things, rather than trying to make things less expensive for everybody. So you start hiding costs in government spending and taxes, and then now you start borrowing. And then over time, the bill gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and at some point, you're just staring at default, which many countries are experiencing that as we speak, including what we call first world countries. If you look at Japan right now, been running crazy budget deficits forever, since mid-80s, I think. So it's taken that long this is when they're beginning to feel the pain. UK is going through the same thing. US, the budget deficits are legendary, but one might argue that war was part of them. But if you look at their spending, a good chunk of it goes to welfare spending. So you're funding consumption today, and you're taking away resources from investment. So where is tomorrow's employment gonna come from? So it's really how you. The question you ask is about how we've organized our economy. And I think the government has taken too much. It's bitten more than it can chew. And what is happening then is not even indigestion. It can't even swallow. So you've got a serious structural problem, and we have to probably have to restructure this economy.
Okay, so what are the ingredients towards a developing economy?
Yeah, so there are about three things that matter. So many people like to pursue this from a sectoral perspective. Okay. But for me, that's not what it is. What it is you look at employment. We start from a truism where everybody, we say man's needs and wants are unlimited. So all you need to do to get employed is to pick out whatever need or want that has not been satisfied and try to satisfy it economically. So you create, so this guy wants this itch scratched. He'll only pay so much because obviously he's not gonna, there's only a maximum for every product, a maximum price, right? So if you're able to supply a product at a price lower than what he's willing to pay, he's always gonna pay. And that's how our employment is dealt with. So the more employed people you have, then the less people you have to, if you argue that one of government's role is to help the poor, then you'll have less poor people to help. Yeah. Right?
So one of them is creating employment.
So you need an environment that allows for employment creation. And that's why entrepreneurs will talk a lot about cost of doing business, which is very closely linked to cost of living. When the cost of living goes up, the cost of doing business is also going up. Okay. All right? So that's one of the reasons we track inflation, because we need to ensure that the cost of living is low. so that the environment in which people are investing and trading is stable. And when you have that, it's easier for entrepreneurs to invest, to work together with investors to invest, and you create employment that way. And the more, the richer you get is by how productive you are. And production is really productivity, not production. Productivity is really a function of ultimately investment. To illustrate this, I'll just simply ask you, the porter versus the guy the guy with the truck, who is able to carry more stuff? Obviously the guy with the truck. Why? Investment. He's got capital. That capital is what is able to move stuff, and that stuff is what. So if you look at the higher income countries, is because the capital invested per person is much higher than countries like Kenya, where the capital investment is much lower. But then there's also a twist to that. It's not that Kenya has invested a little capital. Is that the capital that is actually going into producing stuff that people want is low. The capital, there's a lot of capital that has been invested, that has been acquired, that goes into production that nobody needs. So that we exclude.
I mean, you've said cost of living is high, cost of doing business is high. And all those things are pegged, one would say, on the taxation regime that a country would have. And we live in a country where what's going to happen next year is not predictable of what we have today, because it keeps on changing. Every budget cycle changes. That no investor would want to come into a market that they're not sure of what the taxation regime looks like. Now, how has that stopped us from addressing the cost of living? Because taxation regime is not constant. That means we are spending more, or we are importing things that we could be producing locally. How does that put us on a chokehold in attaining that development level that we want to get to?
So the concept that arises to mind when you speak about that is competitiveness. How competitive is Kenya? So when I'm an investor, I'm looking for where to invest, whether Kenyan or a foreigner. I want to put my money where returns are highest. Right? So that's why Kenyans are running to special asset funds, because Mansa X is delivering 20% year on year, right? And you'll see a lot more of that going forward now that the capital markets are deepening. So what does that do? It chokes when you're not competitive, because you're either over-regulating or over-taxing. Then people don't invest. And when people don't invest, and you can look at it from a sectoral perspective, say, like chemicals, you can produce soap in Kenya, you can produce in Egypt, you can produce in Uganda, whatever. So Egypt, who have power at maybe 4 US cents per kilowatt hour, and you've got your energy costs at 20-something shillings or 20-something US cents per kilowatt hour. Already from energy, you're competitive. Okay. Now, throw in additional taxes. How the tax on businesses. So you've got VAT, you've got your excise duty, you've got income tax. I mean, when somebody does the math, they'll be like, you know what? This Egypt place looks better than Kenya if I'm going to invest in Africa. If the world is your oyster, then you look at, because everybody's competing with everybody. And as Kenya's capital markets become more deeper, then a lot more capital will go to foreign, because the investment vehicles now are there. And in fact, the demand has always been there. That's why people were doing a lot of forex trading and whatnot. And when Mansa X came, scratched an itch. And now they've shown the other investment companies a way. So the investment companies are going to be rewarded because they are able to allocate capital to where returns are best. And so when you've got Kenyans now putting money in places where returns are best, that might mean that our entrepreneurs are starved off of Kenyan savings. So then how do you create employment? So the question of competitiveness absolutely has to be addressed before now, we can start talking about investments that start attracting investments.
And yet, when you talk about competitiveness, then I look at the mother word there, which is competition. And in order for you to be in a competition, you have to come ready.
Yes.
And so this is what I've been asking. What are those elements that are going to have you come ready? Because how can you say you will come and compete at the table when your people are hungry? How can you come and say when you compete at the table or in this race when your education system, which should be training people for an economy-facing future, is struggling? How can you be competitive when your health system is suffering? Because we're saying in order for you to get to the first world, you have to be competitive. You have to be in the competition.
Yeah.
But the elements to have you competition ready, you're struggling with. You have throttling and chokehold debt, which then doesn't allow you to develop. You have a tax regime, which at best is having people on their knees. So how can you even think about being competitive if you don't have the ingredients to prepare you for the competition?
And you strike at a very good point. The locus of our problems stem from, and if you look at it carefully, government spending. Because one of the jokes I like to say is Kibaki had less, but he did more with it. But it's not really that he did more. It's just, so what did Kibaki do when he came in? He liberalized banking. He liberalized insurance business. He liberalized energy. And he liberalized telecommunications. So you had Safaricom that really bloomed because of his policies and M-Pesa and things like that. You've got investments in energy from private sector, because at the time when he was coming in, we used to have blackouts. So energy stability was non-existent. So he did, without spending, he did a lot for the entrepreneurs, so that entrepreneurs can build their businesses and can attract investments. So we've moved away from that. Now we've been running crazy budget deficits, 10 years, more than 10 years now. Budget deficits of at least 5% of GDP. It's crazy. Nobody does that. In Europe, they say you're in the EU. To join the EU, you have to do the maximum budget deficit you can do is 3% of GDP, and even then you can't do it consecutively. You have to have years where you have budget surpluses. Here we've been running crazy budget deficits, and you wonder how we're going to pay for that. And the bill will come. The bill, and it's coming. And what is happening then is you're taking resources away from education, from healthcare, from everything, just to pay for this debt. Because now you're surviving on debt now. If people don't lend you, things don't work. Right? That's where we are now.
I mean, you look at the competitiveness that we talk about, and it's been established that it's very difficult based off the taxation regime that we have.
Yeah.
But that notwithstanding, then one asks the question, we still depend on these very taxes that are high, whether it's on personal level, whether it's on businesses, we still depend on these taxes for us to leapfrog to this development status. And one question we always ask, can you tax your people to develop
into prosperity?
Into prosperity, because that is the notion that is here. You will suffer for a very short time, but look at the bigger picture. Can that happen when you've taxed people so much that there's no surplus, there's no money to move around for them to purchase product that is being sold locally? And what does that do to manufacturers who depend on the extra there is for people to buy? So there is no circulation of money.
Yes, and So again, the locus comes from the spending. Why are you taxing highly? Because government has said it needs all the money it can get.
Okay.
And you can only do that for so long because I think the first murmurs about taxation came towards the end of Uhuru's government. and then you're and then the question was, should we put VAT on fuel? Should you put VAT on cooking gas and whatever? And then there was a whole hullabaloo that I think there was some sort of compromise where VAT was 8%.
Yeah.
And then when this government came in, I think they looked at the numbers, and because they didn't want to cut spending,
doubled it to 16%.
Yes. It can be reversed, because the entire problem is really just around government spending. It can be reversed if we cut spending. The assets that the government has that doesn't serve it. So can the government get rid of some of these assets and use the proceeds to cut down on its debt, which is a big driver of the quest for taxation. But on the flip side also, you see, you also attract investment in those liberalized sectors. So why is the government still holding Consolidated Bank? Why is the government still holding a KQ, which gobbles up like 20 billion? So what you're saying is you're going to take money from people so that they cannot be able to afford milk, and you're going to put it in KQ, offering for a service at a cost that nobody is willing to pay. That's why the losses, right? So it's like I said, a whole restructuring of our economy needs to happen, and the resolution needs to start from government spending. And until that is addressed, discussion of competitiveness will never be addressed. Will never be addressed. There's some work going on in terms of liberalization, even in the railway sector. So that's useful, and maybe that can build up the revenues on guys like SGR or whatever. I like the additional, the luck we are enjoying with Lamu Port. That was another white elephant, right? Well, we're enjoying some luck because of
Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. So it's now getting a bit more use. But one of the things I would do is, why not make the entirety of Lamu one SEZ? So that you can have additional investment there. Manufacturing works well around coastlines. That's almost a truism. If you look at all industrial cities, they're either next to they are port next to either the ocean or a navigable river. There's a reason for that. So there's just some things that the examples are out there of how people like Hong Kong, who inspired Singapore to develop and leapfrogged from third world to first world. But I think we keep picking the wrong lessons from these examples, and we look to reinforce that which we're trying to do here that's gone so wrong. So, for example, we've invested in so we've got the infrastructure fund, but we also had Kenya Development Corporation, which could have done the same thing. We have so many investment companies owned by government to support infrastructure entrepreneurship in Kenya. But how is that working for us?
And I guess that's what lingers, and that's the question that lingers. There's some things that we really need to look at. And I'm just coming from the place whereby if you're not ready to take the full hog, then don't mention it at all. Johnson Derry has been here with us this morning. Thank you for sharing your insights with us as we look into the Kenya that many want, first world. Okay, we'll see. Good morning. Yeah. It's 8 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.